Welcome to Technical Finger Tutorials. In this session we're going to look at laying out some VST instruments and starting to build the tune. So from a previous video we'd already created a drum track and we've got 4x loop. So now we're going to go ahead and load an instrument. In this case we're going to load Hallian. So we're right clicking over here to give us the drop down menu and we're selecting add instrument track, and then we're going to select which instrument we would like. So we're going to choose Hallian. And then from Hallian's browser, we're just going to have a simple piano sound. So let's have a little look. And we'll just use the GM acoustic grand piano. Now we can either create a part, open that part up, and then we've got a piano roll down the left, and we can start mapping in bits and pieces if we want, or we can record. And in order to do that, you will need to have a MIDI controller keyboard, and so we can hit record and then start playing things in. So we can trigger record on and off down here, or if you've got a numeric keypad then asterisk will do the same thing. And then once we have recorded, you can see the parts which we've got recorded there, these little blocks which are now in the edit window. So these are the notes that we've hit, and how hard we've hit them is the velocity which is shown down the bottom there. So at the moment you will notice that there's not a great deal of accuracy in that, so rather than keep playing over and try and get as accurate as possible, I'm not aiming for an instrumental prowess, playing with supreme accuracy, because I'm not a keys player. But that doesn't necessarily matter, because I can go in and tidy up afterwards. So I've got a rough idea of what I want, and I'm going to want it quantized and nice and accurate, snapped fully to the beat. So in order to do that, I can hit Control A, and that's going to highlight all of these blocks. And then if I hit the Q button, keep an eye on the blocks, and you can see that they've all moved to the nearest grid line which they can find. So they're now snapped to the grid, and hopefully they will be in the right position and sound a lot tighter than the original recording. Okay, so that's fairly accurate in terms of where the notes are starting, but now we also need to tidy up the ends. So if we do Control A again to highlight all of these, and then go to the edit function from our drop down, we have advanced quantize, and then quantize MIDI event lengths. If you watch the ends of the blocks, now they have also snapped to the grid. So I'm going to look for an element of consistency in the note lengths here. Want them to be a bit uniform. So this particular B is overlapping with the note following, which I don't want, so I can just grab the end of that block and shorten it, and you will notice that these are a little bit softer than some of the other notes. So what I'm going to do is make them all 127 so that they're fairly they're completely consistent with each other. But changing the velocity is also going to change the timbre of the sound, so it might sound like the piano is being played a little bit more softly. So if we were to drop the velocities, it's quieter. Solo that. You can hear that it's not quite as aggressively played. So we want a healthy volume, and so now we're pretty consistent, we're tight to the grid, we've got our pattern how we want it, and we've set our velocities to give the piano, to start giving the piano a little bit of the feel that we want. So again, we're going to load an instrument because we're going to add in some bass. So I'm just going to select Hallian again, and then we can narrow down the category selection. Most VST instruments will have a browser section like this, so you can say, right, I want to look at basses, and then there might be a subcategory. So I am going to look at, let's have a little look and see. I don't want analog bass. Let's deselect analog, and I don't want acoustic bass either. So let's have a look at E bass, and yeah, why not? Let's have an electric bass finger as opposed to pick, and then we can play along. And work out our pattern using the keyboard, and when we're ready to, we can record, or again we can create a new part, and we can draw in the notes that we want. A bit higher for a bass, that's better. So we can draw in our notes. Oh, let's have a bit of pattern. And again, we're going to pay attention to note lengths, which, if that's at 1 square, that's 1/16. And if it's 2 squares, it's 2/16, obviously. But in terms of feel, I don't want that to go on for quite as long. So what I want is to change the quantized value. If I change that to 32, then we can go in between. Which just feels a little bit better. So, you know, something that you can adjust, experiment with. Just going to take a copy of that and repeat that on the next bar. Maybe we'll pop that note up. And then we'll have similar pattern. So we're going to highlight those, hold Alt, click and drag. Pop that where we want it. And we'll add in a couple more notes. And we'll just put one more of them in there. We're still on 32, so we'll change that back to 16, and you can see there that at the moment that's a little bit late, so we're just going to adjust the length for that, sort out the velocity because we want it on max. So we've got the bass working roughly with the, working with the piano. Again, I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on composition as such because I just want to show you some process. So we might want another instrument, add in a little bit of flavour. Let's go for a string, and we will select maybe a little string section, possibly. Small string ensemble, let's just have a fiddle with that. And again, we can record or we can draw in. So I'm going to create another part for that and draw my notes in. And I'm going to just put the velocities on max just to start with. Control A to select all, Control D to duplicate, or I can do highlight the parts I want, Control C, and then move the cursor to where I want it, and then do Control V to paste. And we'll give that a go. So these notes at the end are a little bit later than they are on the piano and bass, so we can adjust those if we want to. So we've shortened that one, and now we can lengthen that one. So now we've got 4 different elements: drums, bass, piano and strings, and it would be prudent to start labeling stuff so that we know what's what at a glance and it's easier to map things out. And once I've got enough parts and I'm starting to feel like it's, starting to feel like a track, then I might want to add in an element of structure. So this is just a 4-bar loop at the moment. We might have a 16-bar verse, for example, and then we might have a 8-bar chorus, and then go back into another verse. We could have a pre-chorus or a post-chorus. So yeah, we look at the different sections and we want a bit of contrast between the different sections. So when it goes from the verse into the chorus, we're going to want to feel like it's gone from the verse into the chorus. And we know we've got these elements working together here, but it might be that one option could be that we hold off with the strings. And when we get into the verse, into the chorus, from the verse, it just provides a little bit of difference. One thing which I find useful is colouring, right? So I tend to colour verses in yellow. We'll call the chorus part or the hook part red. So now we've got like a verse section and a chorus section, and we can even start mapping out the whole tune, really, if we wanted to. And this might help inspire us. Let's say we're going to have 3 verses, and we're going to have a double chorus at the end, and then that might help us work out what other elements we might need to keep the tune flowing and evolving. But fundamentally, we've started to get a bit of a track together. We've got an element of structure about that, and then our next job might be to add in some more instruments. Might be that we've got a guitar line that we can add in, that we want to get recorded in, and at some point we're going to want to record some vocals as well. But hopefully that shows you how to add instruments and start mapping out the track. We would come back to these elements to refine them and mess about with how they sound sonically. We might audition some different bass sounds. We can audition different synths until we're happy with what we've got going on sonically. But yeah, that's the fundamental basis of mapping out some instruments using VST MIDI programming.